Welcome listeners, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and you're on Big Little Small Talk. Today our guest is Michael Harrison, who is the Community Engagement and Fundraising Manager for Down Syndrome and Intellectual Disability Queensland. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate being here. It's been a bit of organising, but we're here.
I know. Thank you so much. You've made a special trip to see me today. Michael, you are a Bayside boy, have I got
correct.
that right?
Yes.
Where did you grow up?
Well, I didn't grow up on the Bayside. I actually grew up at Strathpine, which when I grew up there, that was the sticks. It was out in the middle of nowhere. And so I grew up there, went to school at Shorncliffe. In the mid-90s, I went travelling overseas like most people do when they're growing up. And when I got back to Brisbane after 5 years away, I just could not go back to the north side. So I moved to the East Brisbane, and I've stayed in the Bayside ever since. So that was about 2003. I class myself as Bayside now.
And what sort of thing were you doing overseas? Were you cleaning tiles with toothbrushes like the rest of us? Or?
No. Well, yes and no, because I went overseas and I was working in a hotel as a front office receptionist. Then I got into a duty manager. It was a really good environment over there, and they were very supportive. Whenever I needed money to go travelling, they would let me work in every department. So yes, I was cleaning toilets and I was pushing hoovers and I was making beds, and I was also being the concierge and doing everything. When I left there, I just a wealth of experience in every department in the hotel, which I came back and that became my field when I got back to Australia after that.
Yeah, so it was kind of enforced learning, was it?
It was. And everyone was very accepting, and look, that like most hotels now, they're always looking for someone to do some work. So I was always happy to put my hand up and do whatever, and I made it an effort for myself to learn every department while I was over there, and the money came in handy, and they were good enough to let me work, do the overtime, then they'd give me time off to go travelling, and I'd come back and get my job back and do it all again.
So was that in London, did you say?
Yes, I lit Petersham Hotel at Richmond, but that was the olden days. Yeah. So that's the olden days.
What sort of family did you grow up in?
So I grew up with a great family. Yeah. Parents were really supportive of us. I've got a brother and a sister. We out at Strathpine, we grew up, went to St Patrick's College. So it was a really supportive environment. It's one of those places that we all got on. Occasionally we fought, but at the end of the day we got on. We had really good parents and it was a good upbringing. And
when you were spending all that time in London and travelling and things, were you thinking that one day you'd come back to Australia and have a family? Like, what was the partner situation like happening there?
I was on my own. I did have a partner over there for a while. I never, to be honest, thought past the next 3 or 4 weeks ahead like most people. And I never dreamed about what would come next. But what I always did do, and I always have had, is appreciate the moment you're in, where you are. Because I always knew that one day, somewhere, whatever the scenario was, instead of looking out over the Thames or looking over one of those amazing places, I'd be looking at a back fence. And so I always made a point. Before I went to London, I lived on Great Keppel Island for a year, working on the resort up there. And every day I made myself walk past the beach with that same thing, knowing that one day it wouldn't be there. So I've always had that appreciation to appreciate where you are at the moment.
When you say one day it wouldn't be there, do you mean that life would change, or that, why do you think you were so conscious of appreciating the moment?
I think appreciating it. Again, I grew up at Strathpine, knew suburbia, I knew what it was like, and I always knew how lucky I was to have that opportunity to be there. And yes, there's a lot of saving, a lot of hard work to get there, but I always knew how lucky I was. 2 weeks ago, I was in Edinburgh with my daughter. She's doing the same thing I did, her working experience. And I said the same thing to her: appreciate everything you have every day, walking up and down the Royal Mile and living here, because life will change and we all grow up at some stage. Life looks different as you're older.
Yeah, wow. Seems very philosophical for a young person. But so you moved back and you were working in hospitality?
Yes. I decided from working in the hotel over there, I decided that's what I wanted to do. And when I came back, I had itchy feet, so I went into Central Australia, worked there for 187 days. So I kept a diary.
Was it a long 187
no, it wasn't.
days?
It wasn't, but I did have an agenda. And I remember, if you're going to work in some of those I was at Kings Canyon Resort, so one of the most remote resorts in Australia, and you have to have a purpose. You have to be there, and mine was to save money so I could go travelling again. Then I went travelling, and then after that, I came back and wanted to live in Sydney for the Olympics. So I moved down there for a year, and again, working within hospitality and hotels. And then we moved back to Brisbane, and then here we are.
So when you say we, tell me about how you met your partner.
Well, I actually met my wife in Helsinki. So we were on a top deck tour over there. We just happened to be on the same tour. We then went separate ways, didn't see each other, and I caught up with her when I got back to Australia, and I went down, happened to be moving down to Sydney. We caught up down there, and I guess the rest is history. She was within a week of moving to Perth when I got down there, so she hung around, and we lived through that Olympics experience, and we lived through life down in Sydney, and then almost the day the Olympics ended was the day we said we need to move back to Brisbane. I've been down here, seen what I wanted to do, and then we came back to Brisbane and moved to the Bayside.
Right. And was she a Brisbane girl too?
No, she's from Bega, so the cheese factory. So she grew up down there, then she went to university in Canberra and was living in Newtown in Sydney when we caught up again.
And when you started going out, was it always talked about that you were going to have kids?
No, it wasn't. And again, I've just always been one of those who's never been thinking more than 2 or 3 weeks in advance. Typical guy at that age, I guess. We spent the first years, I didn't even think about that sort of stuff. And went along, we moved to Brisbane, we got engaged, we got married, and then, the children subject came up and I didn't know what to expect, had no idea what to expect with that, but went along with it. It's what you do. I do think, having my daughter and my son are the most wonderful things that I've ever experienced.
Well, you mentioned, Michael, that you've been to see Laurel in Edinburgh and she's over there doing the same sorts of things that you did. What was she like as a baby?
She has had me wrapped around her finger since the day she was born. Her and I had a connection. We had a very close connection, and we're very similar. We get the same jokes, we get the same humour. And so we've always been really, really close. And learning, throughout life, being there for her, always, I've never not been to watch her compete in something, and I've always felt part of her life. And then, so I found it quite hard seeing her go overseas March this year. And but she's always FaceTiming, FaceTiming, WhatsApping, all that sort of stuff. This year I went over in November for her 21st. So I could be with her on her 21st, and we spent her 21st in Morocco. So that was an amazing experience. She's going to continue on over there, and I've told her to stay there as long as possible and make the most of it. We'll see where she ends up after that.
Yeah. So life was great. You're living at the Bayside, you're working a lot in hospitality, and you decide you're going to have another baby.
Yeah.
And you go to the 12-week scan. What happened at that stage?
It was interesting, I guess, because I thought it was a morning off work. I go there, and my wife is a nurse. I don't know anything about that sort of stuff. And then they were just talking amongst themselves, talking about skin fold tests and all that, and then it came to the 1 in 3 chance of your son having Down syndrome, and I still felt, it's reasonable odds, right? So there's a good chance that this will just be nothing. And then it became the next little period, I can't remember how many weeks it was really, we didn't know what was going to happen. My wife got the call one day that our son was going to be born with Down syndrome. And it was really, I guess we both went separate ways. She went through a grieving phase. I went through got to be tough, got to be a man, and can't show any emotion. And so we took a different journey, which was quite, I look back on that and I think, geez, that probably wasn't the best way to do it, but it was the only way I knew. We got through to the birth stage. He came along, he was born, and on the night that he was born, I guess for myself, all the emotion came out and I cried. And after that though, that was like the genie was out of the bottle and it was released, and I've never looked back since. He's the most amazing boy I can imagine. He just turned 18 this year, and for his birthday, all he wanted to do was go and have a beer at the pub. So we took him down there and he realised he doesn't like beer. And but he's just, he's my boy. He's my man, and my life has changed for the better since he's come along.
There's so much there that I want to ask you about, but you've written this beautiful story called It's Okay to Cry, A Father's Story, and you detail what it was like. Can you tell the listeners, because we're going to get into some pretty heavy stuff, what was your grandmother's role in finding out about having the baby? And
my grandmother's she was getting to the latter stages of her life as well. So she was struggling with a bit of dementia as well. My mother, she was there, she was very caring, and they both wanted to help, they both wanted to be there, And my mother, she was in her traditional Catholic upbringing. We'll say a prayer, we'll keep praying. And to be honest, on the night that he was born, just hearing all that was just overwhelming. It's just constantly in your ear. And, my grandmother, she, on the night he was born, asked his name about 5 times and just kept asking and asking. And not her fault, it is what it is. But I said there was just so much going on. And my daughter was there, so I was trying to put on a brave face for her as well. And eventually, as I said, I just had to leave the room, go out to the balcony, and then that's where it all came out. And it was like, as I said, it was just like taking the lid off a soft drink bottle, all the gas, everything came out. And then after that, the world seemed a bit clearer.
In your story, you say that then your grandmother came out and said, "What's his name?"
And she came out and asked, "What's his name?" No. But I remember sitting there, my mother coming out and saying, "Have a good cry." And my grandmother coming out and saying, "What's his name?" And
I just love the humour in that.
I laugh now, but
I know.
And God rest her soul and God rest my mother's soul. They're wonderful people and they had the best intentions.
I just want to sort of go back to that point where you said, so what is it, the radiographers and stuff, they were at the 12-week scan. Like, can you remember what that was like? Like, or were you sort of still, you said 1 in 3, I wasn't really clocking it as an issue at that stage?
Well, I remember it was the morning of work, so I wasn't expecting any issues. And even after they said it, there's a 1 in 3 chance this child will have Down syndrome. I didn't even really know what Down syndrome was. I didn't know any of that sort of stuff. And then I remember, so my wife and I, we went outside and we were just sitting there having a chat. And I was being positive, we'll be fine, it'll be fine, don't worry about it. She, having a bit more of a medical background, was a bit more, could be serious and it could be, a big thing. But I was just, again, typical, like I said earlier, I only think 3 weeks ahead. So, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. We'll be fine. And as much as I knew that there was the potential, but as always, brave face, chin up, man of the house, you've got to, man up. And I think a lot of not understanding, but also a lot of, you've got to be tough.
You said you really struggled with what is my duty as a male, and you had a little post-it note on your computer that even said you must be strong. Yeah.
And because that was the thing, I had to be tough, I had to have the brave face. And I put a post-it on my computer every day. And when I think about it, I would get emotional and get upset and feel that grieving. But I would just keep repeating over and over to myself, you must be strong, you must be strong. They need you. And then just squash the emotions back down, distract myself with work, get on with life. And the more I was doing that, the more tension was being built up. And it needed, as I said, that morning or that night that he was born, that needed to happen. And then from that, I realised that it's not that bad. And whatever it was, you just make it work. Right? You just have to make it work.
You're on Big Little Small Talk, listeners. I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan. We're talking to Michael Harrison, who is, I'm going to say this big long title, Community Engagement and Fundraising Manager at Down Syndrome and Intellectual Disability Queensland. Between when you were having the scan and when you got the definite diagnosis, what was life like then for you both? You said you were sort of doing it in 2 different ways.
We were doing it in different ways. So I was kind of, keep going, it'll be fine, nothing to worry about. And I think, my wife was more aware of what the scenario was. So she was starting to feel, the grieving, this could be a real thing. And I was typical, I wasn't a typical guy, but like a lot of guys, come on, what are you worried about? It'll be fine, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. And I won't say it was a bit of denial, a bit of bravado, but also a bit of not really understanding as well. And it wasn't till, as I said, once we got that firm diagnosis, it kind of hit me then. But I do remember when I got that diagnosis, sitting there and thinking, you can either do one or two. You can kick stones or you can do something. Use this as an opportunity to make yourself better. And I guess I look back now where I'm now, that was a real big turning point in my life.
Tell me about the grieving. When you say grieving, what do you think you were grieving?
I think that the grieving is to the life that could have been, or I won't say what could have been, but it's more what you expect, right? We expect, and I look at this week. So my son, he graduated from school. He's 18, but he's not 18. He's 18, but he's not out at school. He's not out with the boys chug-a-lugging a few beers like that. He's at home playing with his monkeys. And I had, in saying that, I had the most rewarding day yesterday, just sitting down playing monkeys with him, and it was the
What
most...
are the monkeys? Are they those things where you pick them up?
Yeah, they're long-limbed and they're all stuffed monkeys.
Right.
So they're like stuffed toys. And he loves them. He has about 30 or 40 of them. And so on Sunday, we just sat there and we threw the monkeys to... I call him DJ Xavier, so he puts music on, and he generally it's music I like as well. And then we just play music and throw monkeys to each other and laugh and enjoy each other's company. And that's the way I look at it as well. If he was 18, out with his beard, he wouldn't want to know his dad. So at least there's something.
You are Mr. Half glass half full.
Yeah.
It's a very sensitive thing to ask you, Michael. Did you and your wife have the conversation about termination?
It was brought up for about 5 seconds, and then it's no. It is what it is. That is life.
Was the birth, did you feel any differently at the birth, knowing sort of what was about? Were you apprehensive?
The birthing process was as expected. I didn't, that's a task. As in, like, okay, I've got to be there, I've got to support him, I can't think of anything. This is what we're here for. I do remember holding him afterwards, looking at him and making the promise that I would always be there for him. And he looked different, and I could see, and look, that could have been coming out, that things get moved around and bruised and all that, but I just sensed that it was different. And so that's when it kind of, that was all added to that feeling of emotion that was coming out. But as I said, during the process there was no apprehension. It wasn't until afterwards and I started to think about it a little bit. But again, it was whatever, 9 months of built up, or 6 months of built up tension all in there, and then it just needed to release.
What were the medical professionals like? Were they sort of, they knew that you were having a Down syndrome child.
Yeah.
Were they treating you any differently? Did you get any sort of counselling or anything like that beforehand?
Not really, and that's the thing, and this is one of the, I guess, where we are today is, there's so much more you can do in that space. And to be honest, no, didn't know anything about it, didn't get any information about it. We had to find out Down Syndrome Queensland as we were then ourselves. We did the initial looking up, but from the medical professionals, there was nothing there. I think the one thing that I do remember is when we did reach out to Down Syndrome Queensland, someone came to our house and they put some photos, and the big thing that I said, which I always pass on to everyone now, is they said, it'll be okay. And they showed us pictures of their son, and I can't remember their name, but the big message that comes out of that, yes, there's tears now, but it will be okay. And you know what? It is. It's okay. It's different, but we all have different paths that we take, but it's okay.
So then, after having Xavier in your life for a few years, you decide that then you're going to go give up your sort of corporate job and do the job that you're doing now.
Yeah.
And and I won't ask you what the motivation was. Obviously, the motivation was sort of to be in the world of your son. But tell me about your work. Like, what is the advocacy, and what do people need to know more about Down syndrome?
Yeah, I think if I look where I was when, like I said before, I think in this scenario, and this is a bit of my opinion here, is that there's two camps, right? So a lot of mums nurturing, and us dads, let's do something. Let's go and make a difference. So when he was born, I started doing some small fundraising with there. And so that went on for years. I was still working in the hotels. One thing I will say, I was regional general manager, so I was traveling a lot. We went through the whole COVID issue with the hotels, and that was a challenge as well. I guess the one positive out of that is I came to Toowoomba and I got to meet you guys and Kenneth and all that. So I have very fond
We do
memories.
have a Toowoomba connection, yes.
We do. But after that, it got to the end of it, then I was thinking, what am I doing? Is this really what I want to do? And I think after that, I decided that there's so much more to do with this. And if I can make a difference in this space, in the intellectual disability space, I'll also be helping my son into his future, and then setting him up as well and helping other people along the way. So some of the things that we do, I talk about the very message, it'll be okay. We'll be there for you. As an organisation, we have support services there from all ages. We're a Queensland organisation, so we have to cover the whole space there, but there's a truckload of online resources that people need to know that they're there. We talked earlier about running podcasts to get the message out, that more people can learn about inclusive education, where the support services are, what opportunities there are. Earlier this year, when we actually met for the first time, we were in Toowoomba doing community engagement, where we're hearing what the community wanted up here and what we could do to help that. So I think from that space, there is so much more that we can do, and so much work and more people we can help, not just for Down syndrome, but all intellectual disabilities. And, but the road is long, but there's an opportunity there for us to make a difference.
Because you say Down syndrome people and all the people with intellectual disability have the same needs and aspirations as everyone else, don't they?
Correct.
They want a good place to live, meaningful employment, company of friends and family, and love and intimacy.
Yeah.
So they're the sort of, tell me about the things that you really want. You want prenatal screening.
Prenatal screening is one there. Open employment is another one, especially, and I talk that because my son is getting to his age. He's at that age, and inclusive education. We've got our teachers out there. They help the teachers provide a more inclusive classroom, so they educate the educators. The other thing is community connection. We want to help bring communities together. You've got peer support around you. You've got people to talk to. If you have a challenge or something coming, we want to be able to point you in the right direction to get the best help and the best support that you can. And like I said, the resources that are there, we've got so many which are online, people just don't know, and that's our job, is to get that message out as to what we have out there. But some of the employment opportunities that have come up, I'll give you an example. This year, we had our first ever World Down Syndrome Day breakfast, which I organised down in Brisbane. At the end of that, one of the tables rang me up and said, what have we got to do to employ someone? So that's the Carina Leagues Club. So now, since that day, they've taken on 2 people in open employment, and they've got 3 or 4 other roles that they're working on. And so that's just that awareness of finding up, crossing paths, hearing our story and what we do, and people getting on board and taking action. There's so many other people. Capital Smart is another one who have been big supporters of us. They've created jobs. They've created a whole program, and they want to create 50 open employment opportunities for people with intellectual disabilities. So people are out there. It's just building that connection. The employment's a big one. That's the age my son is going into now.
And meaningful employment too.
Exactly
They talk
right.
about meaningful volunteering and things. Because you also said in your story, and if you would take the listeners through that, you said about what you knew about people with Down syndrome was when you saw the kids on the train, and they were overweight, wore thick glasses, dressed badly, sounded slow and simple, and that they were teased a lot. So
that's I guess that could happen today, but the world was very different back then, and this was in the 80s. And I remember seeing that at the train, and because there was one of the workshops nearby, and they used to all get off the train and walk over there, and seeing that and thinking, wow, I couldn't associate, I didn't understand, but I was very ignorant of that. But if I look at the world now, there's so much more inclusion, there's so much more awareness. You look at something as simple as someone like Kmart have Down syndrome models, and they have Down syndrome dolls, and so there's so much more awareness to make the world more inclusive, but there's also so much more to go, and that's where we at DSIDQ have a part to play, to advocate to governments as the peak body for intellectual disability, but also build communities and make connections and provide a pathway there, so we have a more inclusive world, because as I said, we've come so far, but we still have so much more to do.
Yeah. Can we just go back to talking about the prenatal screening? Because I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the world over, the amount of people born with Down syndrome is becoming less because of prenatal screening.
Yeah.
And yet in your case, I can remember when I was pregnant and having an amniocentesis, and people say you don't have it unless you know what you want to do with the result. So do you think the prenatal screening, what are we doing?
Well, I think for me, we did, and I had no hesitation, regardless of what the result was, and I guess we went there just to check things were on track, and this is what came down. The reality is, yes, the birth rate for people with Down syndrome is declining, but the life expectancy is growing, which means that the population is not decreasing, but the needs of the support is moving into that older age group and all that. So in regard to, I guess it's all about the parents' choice in the end, but as I said, we had no hesitations. No, regardless of the outcome, we were going ahead.
And I also looked up too, Michael, to see whether there was a difference in birth rates between different countries. Can you talk to me about that?
I know ours, or I keep an eye on ours, but to be honest, I'm not 100% internationally or what happens in other countries. But I do know, as I said, the emphasis that I do know is that the population is declining, but people are living longer. So where the future ends up, I don't know. I can't say.
Because I read that Iceland has the lowest rate, but Ireland has the highest rate. And they say it's because of, I think, the prenatal screening, but also because of the number of children that people have. And
Possibly.
maybe the societal view towards termination and that sort of thing.
And that would go to age as well, that people are having children. You're right, the number of children, but yeah, unfortunately, I can't speak of any authority on those things. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? If you've just tuned in, you're in Big Little Small Talk. I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, and we're talking to Michael Harrison. Michael's son Xavier has Down syndrome. What are the sort of really cliched things that people say? What's the thing that gives you the irrits the most?
Look, I think there's a very stereotypical that people with Down syndrome can do more than a lot of people think because they're independent, and they want to do it themselves. One of the things that they're so happy, they're so loving. But you know what? I know a guy who can push my buttons. Like no one else.
Does his name start with X?
Yes, it does. And so it's just like every other boy. You know what I mean? So he's happy, yes. He's loving, yes. But gee, where's he can drive up the wall? And he's opinionated. He's got his own. He knows what he wants, and he wants to get it, and he knows how to play the system with his parents as well. So, but yeah. So that's one thing. They're so loving, but they're just kids, or they're just normal people.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about the idea that there's levels of disability? Is that like something that really grinds your gears as well?
Oh, look, when I hear that, I say there's levels within all of us, right? And some are better at other things. And if I look at my son, I can guarantee you he's a much better dancer than I am. And so he is there's some things that he does really well. Some things I don't do well. There's some things I do well that he may not do so well. So I think in all of us, we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. We all have our own things that we do well, that we don't do so well. So levels, I just think that we've all got our own talents and we're all individuals.
How does your daughter Laurel, it's her life, that's how she's always lived. Do you all, I imagine, as a parent, and for her, a sibling with a disability, is the most common thing what's going to happen to them in the future when we're not here?
I think that's a very real thing. We got our wills done this year, doing all that side and the trusts and all that, making sure that he is provided for in the future. But also, one of the things that we also had to keep in mind is how do you provide for him and give him his best future, but allow Laurel to live her life as well. We did, we set up some sort of disability trust, and we went through all that process. We used my sister as a co-executor as well, but it's trying to ensure that he is looked after for the rest of his life. One thing you do need to take into account is Laurel has to live a life as well. She may have her own kids, she may have her own husband, her own partner, whatever that may be. And so, yeah, I think, yes, she will always be there for him, but it's just trying to set the system up that she's, Xavier is sorted for the rest of his life.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah, it would weigh on you. And in terms of the stress on your marriage, Michael, people, the statistics are so common that this sort of stress puts a marriage under.
Yeah.
How have you and your wife navigated it?
Yeah.
You sound like, every day's a good day. Yeah.
No, it's definitely not. Every day is definitely not. You just, get on with it. You have to obviously be very patient, a lot of listening, a lot of being there, not judging. And, the other thing is, I think the big thing is, don't sweat the small stuff. There's much bigger things to focus on, and it's interesting. One of the big things for my wife is she had to go back to work to get her identity back as a nurse. So she works a couple of days a week now. When I was my previous employer, I was traveling a lot. So now if Xavier is sick or something, I work from home so she can keep going to work. She has to, that's really important that you get that identity back and you are who you are and you're not just a full-time carer. And that, so that's
Xavier's
one of the
mother.
big Xavier's mum. So it's one of the big things that we focus on. And so, yeah, as much as I sometimes, I don't want to work from home, I've got so much work to do and all that, but I appreciate that, for years she's carried the load. So now, it's my turn to do that as well. So if he needs time off, I will. If he's sick or whatever, I will work from home that day, and I'll make sure that I can look after that, so she can have that routine of going to work, going out with friends. She can do all that sort of stuff as well.
And we like going to work, don't we?
Gives you purpose.
That's right. It gives us all purpose, as you say, meaningful employment for Xavier and the rest of us. I read somewhere a long time ago, because I think it seemed to be this common held belief that it was older mothers and you were more likely to have a Down syndrome if you were an older mother. But then I read somewhere that it's actually the older fathers, the older sperm. Can you talk to me about that?
I've heard the older aspect of it. I'm not sure about the older father, because I wasn't particularly old when it happened. I think it's just luck of the draw. And I do think, someone said that they find good parents. And so I'd like to think that I'm sure there's some more scientific aspect to it. But I've had the older aspect, but I've also met some mums who are quite young as well.
Yeah. Well, a girlfriend of mine had a Down syndrome baby, didn't think to have a scan or whatever, but she said that the obstetrician, when the baby was born, said, "Oh, I think this child's got a touch of the Downs about it."
Yes.
So that was pretty devastating for her to.
That's not, that sort of language is very common still, and one of the things is I think there needs to be a bit of education around that sort of thing, because I don't think, one of those things that I don't see, there's no malintent meant by it. It's just an education piece that needs to be there.
So hurtful though. But then I read the statistics that 70% of Down syndrome children are born to mothers under 35. So
that's what I mean. So it's not, the myth was the older mothers, but I said I've met a lot of mothers who are under that as well. So I do think it's one of those things. I don't know the science about how it all happens, but I think
having Down syndrome means what with the chromosomes? You've got an extra
of the 21st chromosome. So you've got 3 of the 21st chromosome, which causes the developmental delay and some physical abnormalities. And that's where World Down Syndrome Day is the 21st of March.
Yeah, and we've just come out of Disability Action Week 2025. Yeah. You talked before about running this event. I think it's called Try 21 series. What is it about?
That was my let's do something. So I started off just back in 2012, where I started running at the local sports, and I love playing cricket. So we put that together. We started with 16 people. We went for 14 years, and by the end of it, we had over 500 participants, and nearly 50 teams playing.
Is it people with disabilities playing?
There's a mixture. So when we started off, it was more just people, community getting involved. By the end of it, Down Syndrome Queensland put in a team all the time. There was a team from actually up at Toowoomba that came down for netball last year. So there were lots of different, and a lot of the young guys with Down syndrome played cricket in the mainstream comp. From that, the local special school, Darling Point Special School, now have an all abilities team in the main comp at the sports centre. So some of those great things. Did take a year off because it was my daughter's 21st and I had to go and see her. So it's usually the first weekend of December, but most of November I was overseas. So in fairness to everyone, I put family first this year for that, and we'll look to see where we go next year.
Yeah. And you're finding the work that you're doing sort of like the road is very long. You say there's so much more that we need to do.
Yeah, I think there is. There's a lot in this space to keep getting that more inclusion, more involvement, making the world more diverse. But in saying that as well, I do think that in all of our jobs, there's always, if there's not one more thing to do, we've done our job. So we always find something more to do.
Is that how it works?
It is. There always has to be one more job to do. And
so you do seem like someone who's kind of, you say you never think about, from one day to the next, but you do seem to have lots of very, very positive qualities. What do you think is your favourite quality about yourself?
I think I'm compassionate. I think I have empathy for a lot of people. I can put myself in their shoes and feel, for good or for bad sometimes, but generally I want people to be the best version of themselves. So I have a lot of time for that, and I find that so rewarding when you can put your head down and do something and make people feel good about themselves. I get a lot out of that.
Is that something that has evolved because of having Xavier, do you think? Or do you think
I get
that
it
was
from
in you?
from my mother. She was the sort of person that would give you the shirt off her back, and sometimes it used to drive us nuts as kids.
Just walking around shirtless.
She would be talking to everyone and listening to everyone, and it's only through the wisdom years that I started to see that I've got that tendency, to find the good in everyone, to listen to everyone, just wanting to give back, help other people, and I think that's kind of led me to where I am today.
Lovely. Sometimes you probably feel as though you're not unstoppable, but what is something that makes you feel unstoppable?
I think one of the things that I get so much out of it is when you have worked on a project or you've done something and it works, but to see other people happy, it makes me feel alive, you know what I mean? And so we recently had our annual gala dinner in October. It was only the second one we've done, and on that night to see it all come together, but to see so many people happy and smiling. A lot of people with intellectual disability were there, and see them control the dance floor, do all that sort of stuff. And it just makes me feel alive. Or, to have helped some people along the way, a couple of the managers where I used to work, just to have seen them develop and grow and know that I've played a part in helping them. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, wonderful. I like to ask people sometimes if they had to describe themselves in 3 words. I know you said before you're quite empathetic. So what are the 3 words that you would use to describe yourself?
Empathetic, observant.
Empathetic, yes. Observant, yes.
Persistent.
Persistent. Very good. Is that something that has driven your wife mad sometimes?
Yes, sometimes, yes. And it's if it's something I really want, I'll keep chipping away at it. And sometimes it doesn't work this way, so let's try another way. And if something, but even, not every idea is a good idea, right? But running the race to the end to realise that it's not a good idea is sometimes.
See it through. I was just thinking, when you're talking about the awards or the gala ball, what is the travel opportunities for people with disabilities? I know that that's a big question because there's so many disabilities, but is there travel companies? Are there hotels that cater for people with disabilities?
I think there are, that you see a lot of cater-wise, as in depending on the disability, as in, the lifts, you often see the braille in the lifts and all that sort of thing. I think there's, if you're looking at employment, I think there's a lot of employment opportunities in those places as well. I do think that communications is a lot simpler now than what it was. And I do think people who work in hotels, cruise ship, are a lot more accepting and tolerant of people with disability. They'll take the time to put in the extra effort to look after someone. Back in my old life, I was at this resort. There was a lady who was there, and she had her 70th birthday, and she had an intellectual disability. I was talking to her support worker who was there with her, and she said all she wanted to do was go on a date for her birthday. So as the hotel, I got permission from my wife, we put on lunch for her, and we got her a big bouquet of flowers, and we made that something special for her. So I think, there's a lot of, because there's more awareness, there's more acceptance, and there's people make more time to make something special, make something happen.
And you said before about places like Kmart using Down syndrome model and stuff like that, because it's that whole thing about if you can't see, you can't be, isn't it? Yeah. And I remember there was a bit of controversy about that, wasn't there? About, was it kind of a ploy, I suppose? Yeah.
Look, you could find a ploy in everything we do if you really wanted to. So I think it's an inclusive exercise that was done. I think, there's more modelling opportunities. There's more opportunities for people to be involved in the mainstream. So I would like to see the good in that.
Yeah. And things like people on TV, in acting roles.
Yes, more and more of it. Well, oftentimes we see in the organisation, we get bus stop films come through looking for people for casting opportunities. There's a young lady, Olivia, who I know who is, graduated from NIDA and who's done all those, does now in public speaking. She's been in quite a few movies. So these opportunities are becoming more and more frequent, and then there's more and more coming out about them. So I think that's a really positive sign.
What will Xavier do this year, do you think?
Well, he's finished school. So we want to get him into a program where he can continue his learning, continue his education. So that's in the process of going through. But like all parents, we've got to get the NDIS funding to work through that. So we put in our application for that, and we'll see where that goes. And then I want to get him into that program. But what I would like to do is, between him and I, go into some sort of small business together, that we work together. There's a gentleman around here who has Down syndrome who started his own little odd jobs business. So that's the sort of thing that I'd like him. I did take him once to, at school, we were running a coffee shop. So I got a coffee machine, and he and I were going to make the coffee for all the parents at the expo. And that lasted 5 minutes till he lost interest. And so I ended up standing there making coffee, and he sat in the corner.
That's
right. But look, who knows? I'd like to do something with him. I'd like to think that I've built enough knowledge, awareness, and skills to have some impact that he and I can do something together. And that would be something I'd love to do with him.
And he wouldn't be a young man unless he lost interest in something and wanted to get on his phone. Do you have a battle with that?
Yes. He loves the iPad and doing all those sorts of things, which is like every other male, both young and old. And so, like all of
Doomsday
us.
scrolling, yeah.
Yes, but at the end of the day, it's just moderating it. And I don't mind if he's on there listening to music and or watching all the rubbish that's on there that I'm not a fan of.
But the brain rot.
There, like I said the other day, we just had the phone out, we're listening to music, and he was
throwing the monkeys.
He was DJ Xavier, and it was a really rewarding hour. So.
Does Xavier have really good friends that he went to school with?
Yeah, he's got a couple of good friends, a young man Jai and Zach. So there is two mates, closest mates, and they regularly do stuff. They're actually, I think they're out doing something this afternoon as we speak. So they want to stay together throughout the course of the next 12 months or moving forward. And it's good also because their mums is also a support network for Vanessa, my wife, as well. So they've got their connection in that as well, so that they can feed off each other and share experiences and work together through that. Yeah,
great. Now, I don't know whether you're a royalist at all, Michael, but do you have a favourite royal?
Am I a royalist? Yes, I am.
Oh, hooray! There's two of us in the world.
I am for the monarchy. I think my favourite royal is Elizabeth, and I think her line, "Recollections may vary," was powerful. And so I think responding to Meghan Markle's comments after the Oprah Winfrey thing, and the Queen put out her statement, "Recollections may vary." I still remember that today. And I use it in my conversation when I have disagreements with people.
It's your polite way of saying, I don't think you're right. So. Yeah.
Yes. So I think she's unflappable, always calm, always composed. And I think there's something about that.
Right. So we just need that line, recollections may vary.
May vary, that's right. So
was that all it said?
I know there's a whole bit that came with it. That's the one bit that stands out, is that, you can have your opinion. We'll have our opinion. and so I have used that before.
Yeah, right. And you said that Xavier loves to dance. Do you like to dance? Did he learn off his old man?
No. He's been watching, he's hooked on Justice Crew. They're not even together. Some young, hip boy band. So he's into all the rap dancing and break dancing and all that sort of stuff. So he can go and do that. I don't think I can. It's a long way down to the ground these days. So, yes,
well, what's the song that can't keep you off the dance floor?
I must admit, I'm a bit of a Killers fan, a bit of Mr. Brightside, all those sorts of things. So I don't mind that, but I must admit, my dancing has been described as going down on the Titanic. So
looking like you're going down, not drowning, waving.
No, looking like I'm not going down. So I'm not great with the dancing, but I do try, and I'm a Killers fan. Mr. Brightside always gets me going.
All right. Well, I'm sure we can find that. I'm sure there's a whole lot more territory that we haven't covered, but thank you for making the effort to come and telling us about Xavier and your life and your family. And it's been really a pleasure to have you on today, Michael.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and it's been worth the wait, and I've enjoyed chatting.
Thank you. That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on Big Little Small Talk. I hope you can make the time to join me next week. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast app.
You've been listening to a 102.7 FM Toowoomba original podcast. For more podcasts or to listen to live and local Toowoomba radio, please visit 1027.com.au or listen on iHeartRadio and Community Radio Plus apps.